Hey, and welcome to another video. This video is on our Rational Rubrics, which is a type of rubric that we designed so that students will actually read it and teachers will actually use it. See, the problem is that if you go online and you type in language arts rubric, you get a lot of examples of great rubrics, but the problem with them is that they are walls of text. Like, here's a few. Here's one, here's another one, here's another one. These are just walls of text, and that's great if you have strong readers and writers, but when you have high school students who do not like to read and write, they're just not going to look at it. And the other issue is that when you have some teachers just it takes a very long time to look at these rubrics and determine for each individual criterion which number to score it, it really is a time-consuming thing when you have a whole stack of paper to grade. And so what we designed was something called a rational rubric, which is just a faster, easier way to tell the student what is expected and to then have the teacher fill out specific, actionable feedback. So here's what it looks like. Here's an example rational rubric. There's always this logo here, and then it just has a bunch of different sections. You have here, you have the total score, you have this little thing here, and you have this stuff here and this stuff here. And let me explain to you what all these things are. Okay, first of all, and this is all being taken from this document, which you can click on right there on that web page. It's a document that will explain the entire usage and implementation of rational rubrics. In short, this is what it looks like. All right. What you have here is you have the total score, which you're going to fill out last. And then here there's a conversion chart, which I'm going to go into in a second. But let's start with this. Every assignment is going to be different. Every assignment is going to have different criteria. Every assignment is going to have different point scores. But this is basically how it works. For each assignment, there are one or more criteria which explain to the student exactly what it is that is expected for this assignment. So this particular assignment had four criteria: an accurate description of the story setting with at least 3 details, description of Jack's personality with 2 supporting quotes from the text, every sentence has to be capitalized, and every sentence has to end with an end punctuation mark. So the student looks at this section here and sees exactly what has to be done for that particular assignment. And then the student completes the work and gives it to you, and then what you do is for each one of these criteria you circle one of 4 separate grades, and it can be non-existent, attempted, adequate, or impressive. Those are the 4 different gradations that you can assign or you can grade for each one of the criteria, and this is what it means. If you circle the red one, it means that the student didn't do it. And these, if you notice here, next to each one of these explanations is language directed to the student, because after all, this is all about the student. So if you circle the 0, you're telling the student you didn't do it. Maybe the directions were unclear, maybe you forgot to do it, and the student should talk with you should talk with your teacher, is what the language is saying. If you, the teacher, circled an orange one, but this is attempted. And attempted, the message to the student is you tried to do it, you need more practice, and you should work with your teacher to get better at it. The next possible grade for each criteria, or score for each criterion, is adequate. And adequate means that you're telling the student you did it. Keep working to improve accuracy and quality, and check your work more carefully. In other words, you did it. You didn't do the greatest job, but you did it. You've illustrated that you know what it is, but you need to get a little better at it. And then the blue is called, if you circle this one, is called impressive. And impressive is a message to the student that for that particular criterion, you did an excellent job, making few mistakes. Keep up the high quality work. So basically, non-existent, you can't even tell if the student knows what this is. Attempted means, well, the student sort of did it. He or she knows what it is, but maybe not. I mean, at least it's present, but it's not really a good quality. I mean, they've got to get a lot better at it, but at least there's evidence that the student has some knowledge of what it is. Adequate means, like I said earlier, that the student did it at an acceptable level of quality. And then impressive means you really, I mean, this student could really teach your other students how to do it. And you'll notice there are points for each one of these, and depending on the assignment, there will be different point values depending on what the target of the assignment is. And then all you do as the teacher is, so now if you're the student, you look at this rubric and you see these are the 4 things I have to do: this one, this one, this one, this one, and that's it. And then when the teacher scores it and gives it back to the student sees exactly how they did on each one of the 4 criteria. There could be 1 criteria, there could be 5, 6 criteria, depending on the assignment. And then all you have to do as the teacher is just add this up: 3, 6, 9, 10, and you write 10. And then included is a sort of like a conversion chart to show, for each one of the raw scores, like a 10 equates to 83%. And then these colors here sort of equate to the impressive, adequate, and attempted levels of quality. And if it's non-existent, I mean, I'm assuming, we're assuming that most of your students are going to be getting like a 50% or greater on most of the things that you do. So we just didn't want to waste time with converting scores all the way down to 0, because if it's less than about 50%, then the teacher and the student both have a lot more work to do. So this is basically it in a nutshell, and there's also an additional comments section where there's always space for you to write additional comments to the student where you can fine-tune your feedback. And then the rest of this document, I mean, you really ought to read it. It explains why everything is there, what exactly each one of these components does, why it's been designed the way it is, more details about what each one of these things mean, why the wording is the way it is, and then it gives a rationale. I know that there are a lot of educators out there who use these rubrics, and these rubrics are great, and I had them, and I was in graduate school, and they were helpful, and I agree that they are helpful. But you have to keep in mind the population of student that we're working with does not enjoy, will not look forward to reading all this, and just will put it in the trash because it's just too much text. So this is a more colorful, more visual, quicker, easier way to get specific feedback. And here's just a rationale for why this rubric should be used. And then to get a better idea about just what exactly, I mean, there's all these sections, there's all these gradations: impressive, adequate, attempted, and non-existent. And what we included here is some examples of how should you score different samples of writing. So for example, to get an impressive score, here's an example of let's, for example, this here, spell all words correctly. Now here, this writing sample, if it's in this font, it means that it's student writing. So for this particular writing sample, for the criteria on spell all words correctly, this would be an impressive. For this particular writing sample, here the criteria and use correct punctuation, that score would be impressive. And there are some additional notes here on the side. And it just goes on to give some examples: writing complete sentences, writing a sentence that use personification, and a thesis statement, and so forth. And those are just some examples of different kinds of writing that you might be scoring. That's all. And here we have some writing examples, for what would be considered adequate performance. For the spelling, the punctuation, sentence fragments, personification, and thesis statement. And then some examples for what you would score it as attempted. For example, take a look here at this: use correct punctuation. This is for attempted. Well, the student used correct punctuation. Showed evidence that he or she understands what it is, but there are still many errors. And so there's an example of just what an attempted is. They're on their way towards using it right, but they're not quite there yet. And the last one, of course, is non-existent. And here's an example of the punctuation for non-existent here. Like for example, there's basically no evidence. I mean, there's a couple of punctuation marks thrown in there, but there's really no evidence that the student knows how to use quotes, knows how to use end punctuation. So you're gonna score this as a non-existent. And of course, scoring writing is sort of an art, and I mean, you could have different education professionals say, well, I think this particular thing should be inattempted, or I think this, and somebody might disagree and say, well, I think it should be inadequate, and but again, when you have too many gradations, when you have too many fine levels of gradation from one grade to the next, I mean, it just tends to just blur the eyes of high school students that really don't like to read and write. I think it's better to just say, here, there's 4 things. Either you did a really great job, you did kind of a great job, you didn't do a very good job, or you didn't do it at all. I mean, that's basically what this is, and it's a nice, concrete, specific sort of feedback. And so that's the document here, and there are some additional comments at the end. What I recommend is you print a few documents, and brain sheets and grade boosters and wall smashers, and have your students start filling them out and start using the rational rubric on them, and I think that you'll see a really positive result. There is one other thing I do want to mention, and that is this logo here can be very useful to a student. For example, let's take a look at another one of the documents. This here is a grade booster that's called Do It Now. And when you get to the part of the grade booster where the assessment, where the student has to do something, you'll see there's that logo, that rubric logo, and that's an indication to the student. And it says also here, turn over for rubric, that the student should just turn over, and he or she can see what is expected for this assignment. I've got to correctly punctuate. I've got to use correct punctuation and capitalization, and I have to clearly and correctly answer both questions in the prompt. And so this little indication here says, okay, now I know what it is I need to do, and then it just is an indication that it ties in with the rubric, which is on the other side. All right, so I just wanted to show you that, and have fun using the rational rubrics, and I think they're going to save you a lot of time and give your students some great information. I'll see you again in another video.